Good morning, everybody. Thank you for waiting. We're going to get started now. So welcome to our webinar. Today we're going to be talking about, is the cloud right for you? So you have me today, Amy. I'm here to talk to Simon, who is our Business Development Manager.
Hi, everyone.
Simon has a number of clients. He's one of our account managers here, and he speaks to them all the time about the cloud and whether it's right for them. He has a lot of experience in making sure that our clients are choosing the right options for their business and they're not kind of just hurtling into the cloud without really thinking about the benefits and how it will affect them. So today we're going to be talking about, is the cloud right for you? So Simon, if we were to get started, what is it that a business really needs to identify when looking at the cloud as an option for the business?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what I'd like to get a message across today really is it's a very, very big buzzword, cloud. I get people come to me and goes, I want to be in the cloud, or I don't want to be in the cloud, or what is the cloud? Just because it's a buzzword, don't think that it is necessarily the correct thing for your organisation or your business to do. There are some first key steps that need to be identified to see if it is going to be successful, or things that you need to be doing to make sure it is successful in your organisation. And also, I want you to think about what are the real benefits to your business if you do it, or are there any? Again, it's not the right thing for everybody. Other things to think about is, do we go fully cloud, or is the hybrid solution the best way to go forward? And perhaps we'll touch on some of the things in terms of how we can kind of get started on that process.
I think with terms of being hybrid, I think it's a word that is being used a lot in the industry at the moment. Do you want to give a little bit of an insight into what exactly that involves?
Yeah, again, whether you're in the car industry or the IT industry, hybrid, everything's hybrid. Essentially, if it's a fully cloud, it means you've got your whole, we're saying put your whole infrastructure in the cloud, whether it's your files, whether it's your emails, whether it's your software, absolutely everything. So you have no infrastructure from an IT perspective in your premises. If you are hybrid, what it may mean is that some of those services go into the cloud, whether it be your email, whether it be some software, but maybe some of it still resonates on premise in your offices.
Brilliant. Thank you, Simon, for explaining that over. So if we move into connectivity, I guess this is a really big thing when it comes to cloud because it's what it relies on. So what would you say that businesses need to look at when exploring that?
Well, I think as the slide says there, the first question is, can your business handle cloud? So whatever your aspirations are of moving to the cloud, the first thing is it going to be a success? And the very first thing is connectivity. If you've got 100 users in your organisation and they all use a piece of software and you're thinking of putting that into the cloud, if you've got a non-business level ADSL line, so a slow internet connection, I'm going to tell you now, you are going to have severe pain. So the first thing I would say about connectivity is, what have you got in terms of connectivity and what can you get? You may be sitting there in a business and you have an ADSL line and you have a frustration because fibre is not available to you. If you're on a business park, that may be the case. Have you got then the option for investment on a lease line? So unless you really have fibre or a lease line, the majority of cloud solutions are not going to be right for you. Okay. And one thing to think about from a connectivity point of view is how you then cost that. So it might be, well, a lease line is available, or I can have a lease line. It seems expensive, but then as we work in that cloud solution, can we actually get that money back from putting in a new solution? That's something that we have to consider.
Brilliant. And I guess the next thing really that I think businesses need to look at when it comes to the cloud, it's one of the benefits of using the cloud, is the whole idea of business continuity and what happens when that piece of tin that's in the corner sort of goes wrong, as if it were.
Yeah, I guess first of all, what you have to address as a business is what is important to you. We can advise as an external business, and we can very easily, and IT companies tend to very easily get in their high horse saying that this is important, this is important. You've got to question that yourself first of all. I was talking to a client only a couple of weeks ago. They are a small client in terms of they've got sort of 10 users. They get some emails, they've got a bit of software, that they put some invoices on. There's not that much processing that goes on. Was there enough benefit to cloud? Was there enough? If systems went down, was it a significant problem? It wasn't ideal, but it wasn't a significant pain, if you like. On the other end, there will be people out there that say, well, let's take email as an example. You get emails and you get customer inquiries, quotations, maybe complaints, and whatever it may be. That email is a massively important tool for your business to operate, and without it, there is a significant pain. It may be that from a piece of software, some of you may be using, Microsoft Dynamics or whatever it may be, and if people cannot access that, there's a significant issue to the business. So it's weighing those things up to see how important business continuity is in those applications. If those two things ring true, then are they better positioned rather being on the reliability of a server that is in your building, or are they better off in the cloud? So as an example of that, it may be I'm going to focus on emails and a piece of software. They traditionally may be sitting on one server and there is an issue with that server. It may be that those two applications, your email and your piece of software, are not the reason you've got an issue with the server, but it's preventing your company from working on them. So what's the impact of that business? If they were positioned in the cloud, then you've got a redundancy, you've got a reliability factor that's going to tick the box. There should be a reduction of downtime, which is key.
Exactly. I mean, it's that whole thing of being able to rely on something that isn't that physical thing in the room. So if we move on in terms of financial aspects, it's the one thing with the cloud that is probably different to if you were on premise, a very big difference, and how that can affect a business's operations.
Yeah, it's always, I always talk to people and always talk about, is there a benefit to your business of doing whatever it is, whether it's cloud or not, is there a benefit of doing it? And then the cloud asks a little bit of a different question in terms of the financial benefit as well. And this isn't, cloud is cheaper, cloud is more expensive, cloud is financed differently is probably the best way of spinning it. Perhaps traditionally we would go out and we'd buy a brand new server and we would say, right, this is going to last X amount of time and I've got a big capital investment on there. The way that cloud steers it is that we are looking at a more operational expenditure. So it might be, right, well, I'm going to pay X amount every month. And unless business changes, if we look at something like Office 365, if you are taking on more users, you know exactly what your cost point is if it's going to increase. So from a financial budgetary perspective, a lot of people like the way that's financed. I'm going to sit here and be devil's advocate as well and say, well, I do have clients who don't want to go in that route. They would say, I would rather buy a physical piece of tin. I don't want to be committed to a monthly ongoing cost. And that's again where you have to weigh up, is the cloud right for you?
I think the one way that you've always sort of put it across to people, Simon, which I think is a really good analogy, is sort of buying a car and buying it on finance rather than buying it straight out.
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing. And again, I'm not going to say what is right and what is wrong, but there'll be some people here who say, right, I want to know that I can have an such and such car. I am going to pay X amount. I won't go into the details whether you've got a Fiesta or a Range Rover. I'm happy that I pay X amount and I change it every 3 years. And they're happy that they've got a fixed cost on that car. There's other people say, I'd rather buy the car outright and I'll change it in X amount of years and worry about the depreciation there, etc. So, it's almost comparing IT now in the world that we're living with cars and motor industry. I think the last point on that financial slide is to avoid the unexpected cost. That's one big benefit that the cloud does have financially. Again, going back to that, I've bought a server or I've even actually invested on on-premise software. This also counts. I might have had it in my budget that I was going to change it in 2019. Something has happened, whatever that may be. Maybe the business has grown and you need more people and that server won't deal with that anymore. So you've now got an unexpected cost and perhaps I've got to invest again. on a capital basis if we're not on the cloud.
And I think the one big thing that everyone is talking about at the moment is security. And I think when it comes to the cloud, a lot of people sit there and go, "Oh, it's in the sky and it's not. I can't access it, and it's not mine anymore, and it's not secure and it's not safe." And I think it's a real myth that really needs to be addressed, wouldn't you find?
Yeah, I think if we take our business, well, first of all, if I look at ACUTEC as a business, we are a relatively successful business. We are relatively financially sound. Have we got the same resource and budget as Microsoft? I think all of you could probably answer that question, and the answer is no. They have made a significant investment in security. If we're going to compare a building, you might be in a premise and you might think, well, we're very secure. We've got CCTV, we have an alarmed front door, we've got locks on the door, obviously. You may have a server room, you may have a rack in your server room. You think, oh, great. I'm going to ask you a question, all of that. They're reliant on things like keys and stuff like that. If we look at the Microsoft data center, and a couple of my colleagues have been lucky enough to go there, they had extremely limited access, I will point that out. There are things like biometric access points. In other words, they're not reliant on password codes, which, however complex we make them, they are not 100% secure. It is about fingerprint, it's about iris. No one's got the same iris, no one's got the same fingerprint. It's a hugely secure environment. There's also things like multi-factor authentication. So not only one way of actually not only one method of security is required to get into certain areas, but in fact multi. It's sometimes two, it's sometimes more than that as well. So the redundant sites, again, we live in a world where something could happen to some premises. I'll keep it as open as that. What happens in that case? You know, again, if you have your server in your building and something happens to your premises, whether it's a fire, whether it's a flood, or whether it's something more severe even, if your tin's in there, if your server's in there, you've lost it essentially. If it's in the cloud, if it's in this case, the Microsoft data center, there are redundancy sites going in there, so they have covered that element. And also there's the security, you know, they are a 24/7, 365, they're a world brand, not just something in the UK.
I think what's important with the whole thing with Microsoft and investing in their cloud, it's not a case of, for example, with ACUTEC, we are one business and we invest in our security as much as we financially can, and then that's it. You've got to remember, with the Microsoft cloud, you have multiple companies across the globe investing in that same thing. So you have the likes of Barclays Bank, you have the likes of the MOD, and they're all using this software. And that investment and the amount of money that is obviously being put into that, Microsoft has access to things that you as a business just don't have, and therefore the security is at a world-class level compared to what a small business might be able to provide for themselves if they're run on premise.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. It's a world-class level. It is being built, so whether you, I probably shouldn't use names, but whether you are the MOD, whether you are Barclays Bank, it's being built for that level of organisation. And then what they've also done, I thought, well, why don't we make it available to everybody? So you might be an individual user, you might be a 10 user, 20, 30 user site, where traditionally these sort of services wouldn't be available. Now we can actually, dare I say, jump on the bandwagon. It's no different to being like a utility bill that we have at home. You know, how many of you have got generators at home? Yeah, that's how we now have to think about, do we need a server at home, if you like, or do we need a server in our business, or can we kind of plug into that utility solution?
And I think with that, with what you've just said about with Barclays Bank and the rest of it, is the way the cloud works is because, for example, with Office 365, you pay per user rather than for a license. Yeah. You kind of, it's built upon your size rather than your level of brand, as it were. So, you know, each user is paying the same amount. It's just how big your business is, and it's based upon how you've scaled. It's not because they're a massive business they get access to this wonderful thing. And I think if we move on now and talk about the mobility of it, you know, that's such a big thing at the minute. And how would you find the cloud works?
Yeah, I mean, a really good analogy of this is I was recently police station for the right reason, not for the wrong reason.
I haven't heard this story.
And they don't have computers anymore. They do not have desktop. They have a dock for a relatively large smartphone, and they can do everything on that. So no longer are we quite in that traditional world of having a desktop. We go to work, we just do our work there. You know, we probably now all have an element of work, or a large majority of us will have an element of work that we do or should be doing when we're not in the office. Yeah, it's a different world to where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So whether it's that your MD needs to get a report just because he's sunning himself in Monaco, he might still need to know what the specific whether KPIs have been hit, and he wants the access to that, and they can get perhaps from a smartphone because of maybe that software is in the cloud. Yeah. It might be that you have multiple sites in your organisation and you want to have a meeting. Do we really need to now travel to one destination to have that meeting, or can we use the benefits of things like Skype for Business? Yes, it's different, but if I can see them on a screen on a video call, is it any different than being in the room? And I'm not going to say whether it's yes or no there. That's some things that you have to make the decision on. There are other applications that are there that are mentioned, OneNote, Teams, that we can benefit as now cloud-based solutions. But really think about, can your workforce be more productive by being mobile? And if the answer is yes, then maybe that's where cloud needs to be thought about.
I think with this, we've talked about all the different sort of what you need to consider and how this would work with your business and what are the benefits. I think one of the big things with the cloud is kind of like where you start and what options are available to you. So, you know, do you do your email? Do you do the whole thing? Do you go hybrid? And I think what would you say in terms of that for businesses?
If I look at this from an existing business perspective, and it is different if you are starting from scratch, you know, because if you're starting from scratch, you could very much say, I'm going to just embrace cloud straight away in every fundamental part of it. If you're an existing business, it is a slightly different challenge. And my strong advice is if you do everything at once, there will be significant pain, I think it's fair to say. So I would always look at it about approaching it on a stepping stone base and looking at hybrid, and I put some scenarios there. So a very easy one for me is Exchange Online. So part of the Office 365 suite, you've got Exchange Online. Essentially that sits on the server at the moment. Perhaps it's quite high in resource on your server, and again you're the reliance on a piece of tin working. Yeah, it may not have problems, so I don't want to kind of paint that too black, but if we can remove it from that server, we have less reliability on that one piece of tin. So, you know, it's essentially on a servers that Microsoft have put up there, and I do use the word servers because there's then, you know, redundancy factor in there. So if you look at the stats, you know, Exchange Online has got an uprate of 99.995 or something like that. It really doesn't go down very often. And if it ever does go down, it's minutes. Yeah, you're not waiting for server reboots, etc., etc. So that would be a very sensible first step and almost a very risk-free first step. As would perhaps Office 365, you may choose to do this at the same time, where you think, actually, I'll have all of my Office applications using the Office 365 application. I think I'd be looking at this as, how long have you had your Microsoft Office version? Is it time for a change? And rather than every 3 years having a big investment, again from a capital perspective, to keep up to reasonable date with your versions, by going on Office 365 you remain on the latest version. And again, it sits back onto that financial decision, doesn't it, of operation expenditure opposed to capital expenditure. I'm actually going to switch the next two round, Amy. So if I jump onto backup in the cloud, I know there's some of our clients on here, so I know they'll be backing up. I feel very risk-free about that. So first of all, backup on-premise has got some reliability, two key areas where there's potential failings. The first one is human intervention. It's you know, dare I say, sod's law that you'll forget to take the external drives off site on the day that you needed to. Are you doing that? Are you taking that backup off site just in case the business or the premises, something does happen? So it unfortunately does happen. We have to live in that real world. May not be very often. The other thing is the reliability of external hard drives. I'm not going to say they always fail. There are times when they do fail. We can monitor server behaviour, we can monitor NAS drives, etc. It's very difficult to monitor external hard drives and the success of those. So putting a backup in the cloud is again quite a risk-free element. And then moving on to servers in the cloud, and again, server or servers, you may have 3 servers in your business. One's got your file server, one's got your Exchange, we talked about that one. One's got this bit of software, one's got a domain controller. I'm not going to go technical today. It might be again looking at that real business specific need of an ERP solution, something like that. You think, I can't afford for that to be down in my business. The cost of that is incredibly significant, let's put it that way. Putting it into the cloud, put that redundancy factor on it, may tick a big box. Okay, remember some of those things that we talked about, things like connectivity, always when we're talking about this. So again, that might be where we take our next stepping stone, where the software application goes into the cloud. And then maybe the final stage, to say, all of these have been working really successfully. I've had all the benefits. I've actually had maybe no problems, because that's what we really want. We don't want IT to be a problematic area. So maybe then it's actually, I'll move everything into the cloud. But that should really be that final stepping stone. Not put everything in there.
Thank you, Simon. So I think hopefully today we've been able to discuss the benefits, things you need to consider when it comes to the cloud, and hopefully given you a real introduction into what needs to be thought about for you as a business in terms of your operations. We are going to have a question and answer session in a moment. Just before we go into that, I'd like to give you a few things to take away. So we are offering today a free cloud guide for all the webinar attendees, which is available at the link. This will give you a good, solid, it's like an ebook, and it comes with explanations of what different aspects of Office 365 are, what different aspects of cloud backup are, and just gives you a nice go-to for when you're going through this process and looking at how the cloud can help the business. The other option that you have for us is you can book a workshop at our cloud studio. Our cloud studio is the only cloud, well, it was the first cloud immersion experience in the Midlands. So you can come in, you can get really hands-on with the technology, see how it all works. If you would like to do that, please drop me an email. And the next thing is really ask questions. You know, that's what we're here for, is to find out exactly what it is that's on your mind when it comes to this, overcoming any obstacles that you might have, and help you get started on what you want to be doing. So you can phone the number that's there on the screen if you would like for us to come out and talk to you about it with you, or you could ask us questions now. So what we're going to do next, we're going to have a question and answer session with Simon, and we're going to invite any questions from anyone there. What you can do is you can either email me, but what is easier for you to do is for you to send me an invite on the instant message. So I'm just going to type in here, hello, when it goes through. There we go. So I'm here. Ask me some questions. And that is it really, unless you've got questions here today. If you please feel free to stay and listen to the answer session. We'll be here for probably about 20 minutes or so for your questions. There's a question being typed at the moment, but I've just had one come through on my email, which is for Simon about Office 365 and the different plans. So this person is a little bit confused because they've looked at it online, and there's different things. There's Exchange Online, there's Business Premium, there's Business Essentials, and they're a bit like, what's the difference and what does it all mean?
It's a very good question. Microsoft are good at a lot of things, but they're also sometimes good at confusing us as well. First of all, I talked about Exchange, so you may see a scheme for Exchange Online. That is purely your emails only. Okay, so if you want to just take that first step of moving your Exchange on your server into the cloud, then Exchange Online is ideal and perfect. The one that I always get quite a lot of questions on is the difference between Business Essentials and Business Premium. First of all, I guess what I'm going to advise is that Business Premium is always the option that we tend to lead and recommend. And this is purely down to usage. It is the slightly more expensive between Business Essentials and Business Premium. The key area there is what is installed on your device. So what Business Essentials, yes, it will give you a version of Word, Excel, etc., but it is purely cloud-based, and there is a difference in usage in terms of how that works. If you do not have connectivity, you cannot use those applications. If you have Business Essentials, then yes, you have that facility in the cloud, but you also have it physically installed on premise as well. So as an example of this, I was on the train last week and I was in Excel as it happened to be, but I didn't have any connectivity, so I was still being able to be productive. However, when I then needed to actually see that connectivity and send it, whatever, then I was still able to do that once I had the connectivity available. So I always would advise that Business Premium. The other thing is, from a learning experience, it's much easier. You know, you hardly see any real difference from a user front end between Business Premium and Business Essentials.
Brilliant, thank you. We've got another question here is, do we need to back up data in the cloud?
That's a really good question. There are a couple of different answers for it. If you would typically have a server that's being provisioned as a file server, then the answer is yes, because it is still essentially sitting on a piece of hardware. So therefore, yes, you do need to back it up. However, there is if your server is in Microsoft Azure, then there is a Microsoft backup that is very easy to fit into that build. There are other options where you've got things like geo redundancy as well. So what that means is that actual infrastructure is being duplicated to different servers as well. So there are a couple of options, and it's probably more a case of you must ensure that you've got backup at that planning stage of what the right solution is the key fundamental part. One thing I haven't talked about during any of this, and I will say it here, is that the licensing and things like that is very simple. In terms of putting your infrastructure in Azure, for example, you know, that's where the hard work is done, and I guess that's, you know, where ACUTEC skill sets come in. Don't think it's all right, I can just shove it in the cloud and it's very easy. Getting it in there, it's easy for us because we've done it a lot. It's probably an easy thing to say there.
The person that asked that question has also added on and said, what about OneDrive and SharePoint files? How does that work with backing up in the cloud?
So again, what's happening with if you look at OneDrive for Business, yes, you can save files to OneDrive for Business. There is a OneDrive for Business backup. What that essentially is moving it to a completely different destination. So in the real scenarios, if in the event of a specific disaster on the data center, that is where your OneDrive for Business files are. So I guess the best advice to keep you as secure as possible is that yes, you would back that up. And likewise with SharePoint Online, it's slightly different the way that SharePoint Online deals with it.
Brilliant. We've had another question, which is, what examples could you give where Office 365 can help service clients by sharing data, etc.? Now, I am going to pass this to you, but one of the ways that we use Office 365 to help service clients is by providing a value add by providing these webinars. So these webinars are all conducted through Office 365. We have an extra license for me personally that enables me to add the option that you can phone in rather than just do the online version. So we're able to provide this extra bit of client service through Office 365. But now I'll pass it on to Simon and he'll explain how his clients also use it.
There's a few ways that can benefit. I think first of all, if I just look at the the kind of key Office 365 elements and how we can share files, whether that's SharePoint Online, whether that's OneDrive for Business. They're just methods in how we're doing it. But perhaps a traditional way would be I might have a Word document, I might save it, say on my local system. It's always a bad thing. And then I send it and as an attachment, maybe to Amy. That's all taking space on your server when you are, because essentially I've got 2 copies of that file because it's gone through an email agent as well as what's actually on my desktop, if you like. And the fact that we can share files means there's only 1 copy of it and I'm just allowing access to it. So that might sound a minor thing, but when you have hundreds and hundreds of attachments that are going through, just sharing it is a much cleaner and lightweight option. The other benefit of kind of using these tools, OneDrive Business is a good one. You're not messing around with external drives, something I regularly do. I think I need to look at that file a little bit later on. I'll save the file into OneDrive for Business. I go home, I might even only want to view it, and I actually only open it on my tablet or my smartphone. I can still review it rather than messing around with additional devices. The other thing, again, Skype for Business is a really strong factor. The fact that you've now got proper video conferencing. I'm not paying for that. It's free because I've got Office 365 anyway. So the fact that I can do a video call with someone is a really powerful tool. You know, sometimes it's not relevant to go and see someone for 10 minutes when they're an hour away. So I think they're probably some of just the key areas.
Brilliant. What we will do then, so that's some questions that we're just going to pop ourselves on mute while you ask us some more questions, and we'll see what you come back with. Okay, please feel free to ask. I've just had a question come through on my email, and it's about backups and ADSL and how that would work. So backing up to the cloud if you've got ADSL.
Right. That is a really good question. It's not something I would typically advise, is the first thing. Now, if you do have it in place, there is a chance that it is working. I'm also going to paint a little bit of a picture where it may not be, and I have seen companies offer this solution and it purely not work, which is just not the right thing to do. And I would question, and I would have the question with your current providers, if you can actually recover that data and see a sample of it. The reason I say that is what happens is the backup of that data needs to go through the pipe, if you like. It needs to go through using your connectivity. It needs to send that data across. There are exceptions, so again, I don't know the context of the client in this particular case, that if you're a couple of users and there's a couple of files that are going through every day, it will probably go through. If it's at an image level where it's backing up the entire environment, it just may not be backing up, is the harsh reality of it. So again, it's very easy to say, great, it's in the cloud, but if the right infrastructure in terms of connectivity is in there, you might have some failings. And the problem here is, and I have seen an example of it, not something that we dealt with, I will say, where there was an issue with a client server. They thought they were backing up to the cloud, and it just wasn't working, and they couldn't recover from that data. So yeah, it needs to be very, very strongly questions of whether that's going through. It might be that you have got very, very good ADSL. So I also have to put that in there, you know, but it's just so variable, it would be something that would concern me.
Brilliant, thank you. We've just had another question in. I don't know which specific part of the cloud that they're referring to. However, they've said, we have our own factory in Malaysia. How would we go about implementing this? We would have users both in the UK and in Malaysia working off the email domain. And they mean Office 365.
Essentially, that is a real benefit of moving to the cloud when you've got multi-sites, and in this case, across different continents, let alone countries. There is no reason why we can't be using certainly Office 365 in the cloud. I'm not going to sit here and solution it, but essentially we have done similar scenarios where we have had people using Office 365 as an example, and they are in multiple countries, and it works absolutely fine. I won't go down to the technical aspect of it here. I would have a solution provider, but it isn't necessarily at the same time just a case of buying that license. It needs to be properly planned. There may be some different approaches, or there will be some different approaches to take that if it was just in the UK.
Brilliant.
I know that's a bit fluffy, and it might be that we need to take that discussion offline a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll just have a further conversation and understand exactly what's going on there. I'm just going to put us on mute while we wait for some more questions. I know somebody was just typing, so I will just press mute and we'll wait for some more. I've just had an email from someone who has asked about charity licensing. So they want to know exactly how it works in terms of payment, and because they've heard about there's a donation from Microsoft and the rest of it. So do you want to explain that? Because I know you have a lot of charity clients.
Yeah, great news if you're a not-for-profit organisation, a charity. So providing you have a charity licence, so there's some steps that you need to go on for that, but Microsoft have always been very, if I say generous in whatever way, and ethically correct from a non-profit organisation. So if we look at, there is a SKU called E1, just to make some of these licensing packages more complicated. If you're a non-for-profit and you have an E1 solution, which essentially will certainly deal with your emails, there are a couple of other benefits in there as well. It is a non-cost for a charity. They will want proof. And there is also discount then across the range. So for example, if you want the business premium, so it would be an E3 license for Office 365, you know, it's kind of just over about £1.50. Please don't quote me on that today. About £1.50 a user. If you have E3 up to about 300 users, it then changes. So I think what I would say here, there is a significant discount and sometimes no cost at all to not-for-profit organisations. Mm-hmm. For those actually looking at Azure, recently it's been adopted, so you have a number of, I'm going to call it credits, but we'll call it pounds or dollars, whatever you want to talk in, where it's about $5,000 per year free on Azure. So yeah, these things are very much set up to assist with not-for-profit organisations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think what Microsoft's done with Office 365 for non-profit has been really good. We will probably be wrapping up now. The chat box seems a bit quiet. So I'd like to say thank you to everyone who has attended today. It's been brilliant answering all your questions. If you would like to know any more about the cloud or would need some advice, then please do feel free to call the number. I'll switch back to that screen now. Do remember to download the cloud guide. It's free. It's got lots of information that will be really helpful to you. Book a workshop with us, learn a bit more, get your hands on the actual software and see how it works. But yeah, ask us to come out and talk it through with you, and we'll have a discussion about how we can help. So yeah, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, bye.